This video contains spoilers for Season 2, Episode 1 of Fiona and Cake. You have been warned. It's finally here. After almost 2 long years of waiting, we finally have more Adventure Time of Fiona and Cake content, and oh boy am I excited. We get a cute little recap from Astrid on what happened in Season 1, with these really cute little drawings showing Fiona in all the other past universes that she visited during Season 1, which kind of sets up the plot for Season 2, which I'm guessing, but I'll get to that in a little bit. It's barely been 30 seconds in and we already have more bubble line content. This is just amazing. But Marceline also implies that Huntress Wizard and Finn aren't exactly healthy. What I mean by that is their relationship. It seems they're on and off again. Now, we get another little hint as to what I believe Season 2 will be about, and it's the stark contrast between Astrid explaining that Fiona lived happily ever after, transitioning to her face looking all tired and sad. Even though she smiles after, I think that direct contrast with the fade between the happy and sad is what I think will be the plot of Season 2, that Fiona is supposed to feel good. She just saved the world, but she doesn't. And the reason why I believe that I will explain very soon. But then we cut to Fiona in her room, in her universe, which she finally canonized in Season 1. We of course see the BMO alarm clock, along with a radio station called the GROF, which of course is Betty Groff, meaning there are probably some remnants of the Ice King's mind in her universe, even though it's its own thing now. But the person who is on the radio is DJ Slime, who we actually saw in the trailer. He's the person who opens up for DJ Flame. And if you didn't know, DJ Slime is the human gender bent counterpart of Slime Princess. Now, another really cool thing that happens is when Fiona turns her TV on. And at first it opens up to Cheers, which makes you think that, oh no, maybe their universe isn't canonized after all. Because if you remember in Season 1, Fiona would try to change channels and Cheers would be the only thing that was on. We also see some snails, which is probably another cool reference to the original snail in Adventure Time. But this time, Fiona tries to switch channels on her TV, and she finally has more channels, which means her universe is canonized. It's its own thing now. But what are these TV shows that she flips to? Well, we actually know every single one. The first one is obviously Cheers. The second one is Friends. The third one, I can only assume, is Gilmore Girls. I mean, the autumn layout with a nice, cozy, cute town. It just screams Gilmore Girls. Amazing show, by the way. The next show being Sister Sister. And finally, what looks to be an unknown anime character defending her castle. But if you recognize this castle, you should, because we saw it in the trailer. You know, Fiona with her one-arm prosthetic laser arm. This is that same castle, and it actually shows up again later in this episode, and the implications are pretty crazy. Cake gets her own apartment, which is pretty cool, and some nice character development for her, but she ends up eating breakfast at Fiona's, and would you look at their eating? Waffles and hot dogs. A direct reference to bacon pancakes. Opposite of pancake, waffle, bacon comes from a pig, and what else comes from a pig? Hot dogs. Pretty cool reference. Now we see Fiona hold up a to-do list, and this pretty much what drives the entire episode is her gathering these things on the to-do list. Now, the new intro actually came out a couple days before this episode dropped, but I figured I would just cover it in this, so I will. My very first thoughts on it. Don't get me wrong, an amazing intro. I love the art style. It was done by Small Boo Studio. This is the same studio that worked on the episodes Beyond the Grotto and Ketchup from Adventure Time. They also animated the song Winter Wonder World from Fiona and Cake Season 1 in the episode The Winter King. But for me personally, nothing can beat that iconic first intro that we got for Fiona and Cake Season 1. But there are still a ton of details in this new intro, so let's talk about it. Obviously, this dandelion represents Fiona's wish to make her world canonized and real, which transitions into the Betty Groff fountain statue, or rather, Gold Betty. Now we see a green slash, which transitions into Huntress Wizard on a flower, but the green slash is pretty representatory of what happened to Finn in Season 1, where he ends up getting slashed by the heart of the forest, and as we'll see later in this episode, a pretty big plot point. But for Huntress Wizard on the flower itself, it's a direct reference to the anime revolutionary girl Utena, whose opening also has a girl laying on a flower. Then a shot of Huntress Wizard, who we actually see is in Fiona's world. I will explain this later on, but we see this same background in Fiona's universe. So somehow Huntress Wizard ends up here, and the intro reveals that. Then we see Huntress Wizard fighting in the heart of the forest with her green arrows that transitions into Finn, the human, getting wrapped up by these vines with thorns on them, who then breaks out as Fiona, which are actually rosebush stems, as we'll see in the next clip. But this seems to represent that Huntress Wizard is trying to help out Finn in some way and ends up crossing paths with Fiona. However, as we see in the next clip, we officially see the roses. It seems that something is going to happen that ends up crossing multiverses in some sort of parallel way. I know I did a bad job at explaining that, but as we can see, Huntress Wizard is upside down and Fiona is right side up, which to me pretty clearly shows that there will be some sort of parallel universe involved, because we also see a little piece of the dandelion fly by in this same shot. The pieces are there. I did a bad job at explaining. If you can help me develop that idea, please let me know in the comments. But that is the official Fiona and Cake Cake intro, which transitions us into the title card of this episode, the Hare and the Sprout. Now, getting into the actual episode itself again, as we can see, Fiona's universe is recovering from the scarab attack, which is also pretty obvious throughout this entire episode, as we see signs that there is scarab relief currently going on throughout pretty much the entire episode. But now, remember when I said that we saw Huntress Wizard inside of Fiona's universe in the intro? Well, here it is. As we can see, rooftop cinema admission free, that is the exact same thing that we see in the intro. It was kind of obvious at this point, but it's officially confirmed that Huntress Wizard somehow ends up in Fiona's universe. Now it's time for some detective work, because pretty much every background character in Fiona's universe is either a gender bent or non-gender bent human version of an Adventure Time character. So let's just get started. Starting from left to right, these two seem like genuine background characters, but then we see a character that was introduced in season 1, episode 1. He was the guy with the fushigi balls that Fiona was walking past on the sidewalk. Then for the life of me, I could not figure out who this character is. I just could not figure out who the gender bent version of this character is in the original series. So if you do, please let me know, because it is bugging me. Then we have Abraca Danielle. Then on the roof, we have Muscle Prince, who is the human gender bent version of Muscle Princess. And finally, we see the human gender bent version of Ron James, one of the wizards who went on that iconic trip in the episode Thanks for the Crab Apples, Giuseppe. Then we see one of the lemon carbs walking their dog, which is canonically correct, because if you remember, one of the lemon crabs ate the other, so it would make sense that we only see one lemon carb now. Another random character making a comeback. This little boy walking right here is actually Embryo Princess. You don't see it in this shot, but their hat has a gem on the top, and that crack in their forehead, along with their pink backpack that looks like an embryo, pretty much confirms that this is the human gender bent version of Embryo Princess. It would also make sense because he's a kid. Now, the person that he's holding on to, I have no idea. Again, I tried my best to find out who, but I just couldn't find it. This character also appears in season 1 in the finale, so if you know, please let me know. And then this person that Fiona is helping out in the hardware store is actually Buck Pudding from the episode Root Beer Guy, where he owns Pudding's hardware store. This is the human gender bent version of Buck Pudding, and she also owns her own hardware store. The next person we see is Turbo Allen, who is the gender bent human version of Turtle Princess. It's kind of weird that we don't see him working in a library, but nonetheless, that's who it is. Then we see some more characters on Queenie's tour bus, which is still thriving, it seems. Starting from left to right again, this character doesn't seem to be from an Adventure Time, but actually looks most familiar to the character Roy Gribbleston, who is from the web series and television show Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Next up is the Bus Kid, who is actually in the credits listed as Bus Kid, but voiced by the same person who voices Astrid. So, most likely, it's this universe's version of Astrid. Then we see Normal Woman, or whatever her name is, as the human gender bent version of Magic Man, aka Normal Man now. And in the last window, we see Dr. Prince, who of course is the human gender bent version of Dr. Princess. But let's talk more about this interaction between Queenie and Fiona. You see, I think Queenie nails exactly what Fiona is already thinking, that everyone around her thinks she's this great hero, but she herself doesn't believe that. I think this also means that Queenie will have a much bigger role in this new season, and as we'll see later in this episode, that's probably going to turn out to be true. But then we see Mcron's candy store once again, and we see a cameo from the Gumball Guardian with some Adventure Time characters in there, along with a callback to Lady Rainicorn as Candy Unicorn, along with a cameo from a character all the way back in season 2 of the original Adventure Time series, and that of course being Lady Cutter, the human gender bent version of Sir Slicer. Anyways, Fiona and Cake were there for one of the ingredients on their to-do list, and they end up succeeding eventually, which leads us into the next scene where they are under what looks like a cherry blossom tree, which could be a reference to the episode Little Brother, where at the end, the tree fort blossoms into a cherry blossom tree. But then we have two new characters, this first one being the human version of Wildberry Princess, and in the very back, of course, Starchy, along with a very brief cameo of the human gender bent version of Hot Dog Princess. Now, after they leave the candy shop, Fiona hands Cake the receipt in which Mcron wrote his number down for Cake to text him, but there's one interesting thing on this receipt, and that's that in Fiona's universe, it's 2024. Now, what does this mean and what implications does it have? I don't really know, but it's interesting that we get a confirmed year on which this universe takes place in. Then Simon calls Fiona, which technically shouldn't be possible because they are in two different universes. But if you remember back to the episode The Winter King himself made the phone so that it was able to call through different universes. So this makes sense. But his response?
Hey, girl.
I think this is a reference to Turtle Princess.
Hey, girl.
I mean, she pretty much says the exact same thing. In the background, as we see Simon going for a little walk, it looks like there's a cute little BMO trap that Finn and Jake made. Cutting back to Fiona though, we see a vending machine that looks like BMO with the name GMO. But then we also see a kid skate by on a skateboard. And I believe this also represents BMO because as we know, BMO loves to skateboard. In the background, we see a clam truck, which is a reference to the episode Simon and Marcy when they are traveling the post-apocalyptic world and come across a clambulance. Now, at this point in time, Fiona still wants absolutely nothing to do with DJ Flame as they broke up, or he broke up with her. So when Cake spots a mural of him on the wall, she covers it up, but we also get two new background characters. The first one being Lemon Hope, and the second one, and this could be a little bit of a reach, but it kind of looks like Dogcopter from Steven Universe. If you think it looks like anybody else, please let me know. But then we also see three new background characters. They look too unique just to be throw-off characters. Now, starting off on the left, the only person that I could think this could represent is Big Destiny. And the only reason is I'm going off of the orange hair and then specifically the glasses. They look very similar to Big Destiny's. Then the two characters on the right. Now this first one that is walking away from us, there's only one character that I could think of and it's so out there. But they're from the episode The Other Tarts and that character being Grimby. I'm only saying this because Grimby seems to have a similar looking backpack, but then again, that could be totally wrong. And as for the last character, again, they look too unique to just be a throwaway character, but I honestly have no idea who this could be. So again, please let me know if you do. We also see what looks like a reference to Pizza Steve from Uncle Grandpa. Then two more background characters who look too unique to be random, but I have no idea who they are. So again, please let me know if you do. But during this entire time, Fiona and Simon are having a conversation. Simon talking to Fiona about her opening the sweet spot, which is what she was gathering all the things on her to-do list for, and Fiona just really checking up on Simon. And something to note about Simon himself is that he seems to be doing much better. He does tell Fiona that he's going to be a professor at WizArts, which is really cool, but just overall, he seems to be in a much healthier spot. Now, if you remember back to Fiona and Cake Season 1, Episode 2, Simon Petrikov, you would know that Simon used Chuskus as a sacrifice to try and get Betty back. And now this confirms that that did kill him, but Chuskus is officially dead. But something picks up this orange, and it's a lion, but not just any lion, the lion that the Lion King himself took over, who is getting hunted by Huntress Wizard. But the lion leads her to a cave, which looks like the same cave that the vampires originated from and came out of in the Stakes miniseries. And Finn is inside of this cave, which leads off from what happened to him in Season 1. He is not looking well after getting slashed by the heart of the forest, and Huntress Wizard finds him here. This is also the cow that the Vampire King ends up biting in the Stakes miniseries as well. From the images and trailer that we got, we kind of speculated that this was going to happen, that Huntress Wizard was going to try and find a way to fix Finn. Now it looks like he probably won't turn into anything yet, but that he's just deathly sick from this scratch. However, cutting back to Fiona for a minute, she finally arrives at the sweet spot, which is revealed to be Gary's own bakery. Because if you remember back in episode 1, season 1, he reveals that his 64-step plan dream is to own his own bakery. And it looks like that has finally come to fruition. We also see two more background characters who look too unique to just be random, but then again, I have no idea who they are. So if you do, please let me know. Sounds like a broken record at this point, but yeah, please comment if you do know who these people are. It's also revealed that Marsha Lee lives on this plot of land as well, and still has a bad relationship with his mother, as her contact in his phone is just Birthgiver. Now, unfortunately, Donald Glover did not return to voice Marsha Lee. However, the new voice actor is still pretty good, but as soon as he started strumming his guitar, I had hope, but no, Donald Glover is not back. However, Hunter jump scares Fiona with a rosebush plant. And does this look familiar? It looks eerily similar to the heart of the forest. Hunter also mentions that they just keep popping up throughout the city, which I don't think is a coincidence because it also scratches Fiona with a scratch that looks eerily familiar to the one on Finn's back, along with a thorn that also looks eerily familiar to when Finn had the grass sword thorn growing out of his hand. There are a lot of parallels that are happening, and I don't think it's a coincidence. Anyways, they finish setting up the sweet spot, and we also get a look at three new background characters who look too unique to be random, but once again, I have no idea who they are. They actually look kind of familiar to the humans that we see in the episode Helpers, just with their unique outfits, but if you know for sure who they are, again, please let me know. Anyways, Gary has a toast and says,
To the morrow!
which is most likely a reference to the Morrow, Princess Bubblegum's giant falcon. So Finn is pretty much dying, right? And Huntress Wizard does not know why. So she tries to use some of her magic to find a cure to no avail, which is canonically correct. As Princess Bubblegum once said,
Listen, all magic is scientific principles presented like mystical hoodoo, which is fun, but it's sort of irresponsible.
but she does end up getting enough information out of Finn to track down Simon to find out what actually scratched. But then we cut to one of the scenes that we saw in the trailer, with Fiona and Cake fighting all of these metallic soldiers. Now this is where things get weird. First, they're on top of this huge tower, with something glowing in the middle that these soldiers are trying to get to. Now, for the captions of this episode, they label this Fiona as young Fiona. I have no idea what that could mean, but I just thought that I should point it out. Anyways, Fiona and Cake end up defeating all of the metallic soldiers, but something weird happens. These soldiers were actually all of her friends: Gary, Marshall Lee, Hunter, LSP, Mcron, and for some reason, Martin. That does make me think that Martin will have another role in this new season somehow. Then a wet, featherless chicken starts crawling in front of them, but we've actually seen this featherless chicken before. It was the Winter King's pet in that episode. However, during the fight scene itself, if you look in the background, for whatever reason, we see Huntress Wizard. This is, of course, Huntress Wizard's wolf form from the episode Flute Spell. But why is she here exactly? Well, it turns out this is a dream. And Fiona and Cake both shared this dream, but we actually knew this already. Going back to season 1, at the end of every single episode during the end credits, Fiona and Cake both shared the same dream. So we knew that they can have shared dreams together, and that's exactly what happens here again. However, why is Huntress Wizard appear in this dream, and what does all this mean? Well, for what it means, I would assume that this is Fiona's subconscious telling her that she isn't a hero at all, and actually ends up causing more harm than good. If you think about it, all of the universes that she visited, or at least most of them, she ended up leaving it in a worse place than it was in beforehand. I think there's some guilt associated with this deep down in her subconscious. As for Huntress Wizard appearing here, this could be how they end up connecting and end up helping each other out. We also hear the time gong that we heard in the episode Prismo the Wishmaster, that those two clockhead guys were banging each other over the head that were perceived as time waves throughout the universe. Now, we know this is all a dream because Queenie is the one who wakes them up from this dream, along with some of her goons, and a guy in the background wearing a funny disguise. Now, if Queenie represents the King of Oo, then this mysterious person in the background most likely represents the mysterious campaign manager who turned out to be Orgalor. So will we have some primordial beings in this new season? Possibly. In the trailer, we do see the Cosmic Owl, along with a lot of dream sequences. It's looking like that might be the case. Simon finally arrives at Wizards, and we see a huge glow up from Kadabra, Petmint, and Blaine. I mean, look at them. But the class that Simon is teaching is History of Magic Artifacts, which totally makes sense because that was pretty much his job before he turned into the Ice King, as he was an antiquary. Now, the things on his desk are some blue-looking gems, which I have no idea what they are. Obviously, the Enchiridion, and then for whatever reason, the Norton Disney dodecahedron. Kind of random that it's here, but that's what it is. We also get another cute little bubble eye moment when Simon throws Petmint a Timmy plushie, along with the lines,
Mommy, say hi.
Just so cute. Anyways, Huntress Wizard ends up tracking down Simon, who tells her about the Heart of the Forest and the whole Finn situation. So that's exactly where she goes, to do some investigating. She ends up finding the Heart of the Forest and does this weird little hand-eye thing, but that's actually something we've seen before. In the episode High Strangeness, Nurse Poundcake does this exact same gesture, and it's most likely used to see through the physical realm into the spirit realm, because Nurse Poundcake does this as she's a part of the secret society, so she's probably learned some of these gestures in order to fuel their conspiracy theories. But back to Huntress Wizard finding the Heart of the Forest, she pulls out her flute to most likely contact the spirit of the forest, which would make sense if the hand gesture would be able to see spirits. But then we get one of the most horrifying things in Adventure Time. The bear that Finn fought back in season 1 slowly walks up behind her, and then the episode ends. Obviously a huge cliffhanger, which makes me really excited for next week. But let's talk about the end credits credits because they don't seem to be as impactful as season 1. As far as I can tell, there doesn't seem to be any secrets in the end sequence. I mean, there are a few symbols like Cake, some eyes, Cake's tail, Fiona's sword, Prismo, and some candies lying around, but other than that, it seems to follow the same art style as the title card. If you've noticed something in the end credit, please let me know, but I'm gonna be trying to make a detailed breakdown for every single episode. That's why this video has taken a bit longer to come out, because it's actually taken me quite a bit of time to talk about this episode. So don't forget to subscribe if you want the most detailed breakdown of all the episodes once they come out. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm so excited to make more content. So thank you all for sticking with me. But as always, stay adventurous.